From physics to psychic is just a quantum leap. For the next hour, Santa Barbara author and psychic Pam Olsie is ready to take your call at 564-1290.
Pam provides valuable insight into your personal world,
Your relationships, and how you can be more consciously aware of creating the life you want, the life you deserve. Call now, 564-1290, and make the leap.
Welcome to the Pamela Olsie Hour. So exciting to always have you with us, have you joining us, have you part of the consciousness shift that is happening on the planet right now. I love that you're wanting to improve your life, to expand who you are, to better the lives of other people. And that's why we do this show. Basically, help inspire, empower, give you tools. And we interview great guests here that have always got some, I think, very valuable information, and hopefully you will too. And tonight, we have Debra Lynne Katz on the show. She is the author of 3 popular books. This is a great subject now. We're exploring this for a little while, you guys. We're going to be talking about psychic abilities and remote viewing and clairvoyance and mediumship. And Debra Lynne Katz, K-A-T-Z, she's the author of You Are Psychic, Extraordinary Psychic, and Freeing the Genie Within. She's the director of the International School of Clairvoyance, and she offers quality training in the psychic and healing arts to thousands of people worldwide. She's an international renowned speaker and psi researcher, PSI, that's psi, and longtime clairvoyant, reader, healer, remote viewer. She's also going to be speaking at the upcoming Applied Precognition Project Conference in Las Vegas in June, so we're going to talk about that. She's a member of the International Remote Viewing Association, the Rhine Research Institute, the Parapsychology Association, and the Society for the Society for Scientific Exploration. So she is a busy girl. And what's fun, because we broadcast out of Santa Barbara, California, is Debra has an identical twin sister who lives in Santa Barbara, and she's also a psychic. So this is fun. Debra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I love that you are bringing this information into the world. I really believe, Debra, that this is important, that there's something going on with the consciousness on the planet, that we're all starting to move into this. And anytime I can interview someone who is promoting that and bringing that information onto the planet, we've got you on the show. So
I know this is the subject of your own work, and it's just such a pleasure to talk to someone who's really on the same wavelength with the same goals and an in-depth understanding of this material. It's really a joy to speak with a radio show host who has such wonderful knowledge.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. So let's get right into it for people that are just tuning into the show. Let's talk about what is clairvoyance.
Sure. Well, clairvoyance is a specific psychic ability to see information in the form of pictures, visions, colors, anything visual.
So that's clairvoyant as opposed to the definition of clairaudience is?
Clairaudience is the psychic ability to hear information, so on an auditory level, but it's more on an inner level as opposed to with your physical ears.
Right. And then we have clairsentient.
And that is the psychic ability to feel other people's feelings, emotions, physical sensations, and that could range anywhere from pain to sexual arousal to energy levels like feeling tired or feeling excited. We can feel each other's sensations through clairsentience.
Perfect. And what about mediumship?
Well, mediumship can involve clairvoyance or clairaudience or clairsentience in that you can hear and see and feel, but it pertains directly to communications with other spirits. So not just living people, but people that have passed on. And then there's different forms of mediumship.
Okay, and then these are all under the umbrella of psychic, right?
Right. These are all psychic abilities. You could also call them falling under intuitive abilities.
Mm-hmm. And what about remote viewing? How's that different?
Well, remote viewing would encompass all of these things. It can come in visually, auditory, feeling. But these days, in particular, remote viewing would refer to more describing locations, physical objects, photographs, and usually there's a set of protocols involved. Now, some people will just use remote viewing interchangeably with clairvoyance, but I've been part of some different communities where there's a tradition associated with the word remote viewing. So a lot of times you'll hear, particularly like if you go to the Applied Precognition Conference or the International Remote Viewing Conference or the Parapsychology Association Conference, when you hear remote viewing, they're talking about using it in a structured way where it's not about reading people as like who want readings. You can use it to tune into the minds and activities of people, but it's more about gaining information for crime solving, for making financial wagering, for finding lost objects, or even some people will use it to make archaeological discoveries or understand events in history. So I distinguish between remote viewing and clairvoyant reading or psychic readings, because clairvoyant readings, psychic readings, mediumship is more about getting information to help people for their healing, as opposed to just more data collection in terms of remote viewing. Oftentimes remote viewing is also done under more controlled conditions, under more blind conditions. So you'll tend to not have information up front about what it is that you're tuning into. And some remote viewers are very strict about that, where they won't want to know anything about a subject that they're looking at until afterwards.
Well, and Deborah, also, people assume that psychic means psychics can actually see the future. And I'm sure it can include that. Does remote viewing, can they also do remote viewing in time? Can they go into the future? Is it more present day? You did bring up that
No.
they can look at history.
Absolutely. Both, any of your psychic abilities can be about the past, the present, and the future. And now with the future, you'll find both with reading people's futures, like a person who comes for a reading, or let's say tuning into a future event. There seems to be some subject matters that can be accessed more easily than others. So it seems like some things are set in the future and you can read them, and others are not so set. It also seems as if certain things like major changes are more easily registered by psychics or remote viewers than if there's a lot of small things happening, but not such major or dramatically emotional events.
Well, now, what do you mean by some things in the future are set and others aren't?
Well, it just seems like there are certain events that are perceivable and are determined. One of the things I find when I read some people is, let's say someone is going to meet the man that they're going to marry in a week, and they're going to be with him, or they're about to get a job in a few weeks, and it's going to be a major job change, and they're going to be with it for a while. That information seems readily available. However, let's say someone wants to know who they're going to meet, but it's not going to happen for a couple years, or maybe they're going to date a whole bunch of people. Well, until they meet that one person. All those little details may not be as clear. The other thing that I've found is that some people, it seems like their future is blank, and it's blank because they haven't created it yet. And this isn't something I just believe. This is something I discovered after reading hundreds of people, that some people have projected what they want into their futures, and that is more set. Other people, their futures are wide open, and you'll tend to find that these are the people that are saying, tell me my purpose. I don't know what I want to do with my life. And when you look at their future, it's wide open. It seems like there's nothing set. So part of it is that they haven't created it yet. They're creating as they go along. Others, it seems like they already had it more firmly established, and then that's easier to read. At least that's what I found as far as clairvoyant reading.
hmm Actually, I have a question for you too, based on my experience too. Sometimes I can, just what you said, I can see absolutely people are headed a certain direction. But if someone says, for example, am I going to get this job? And I tune into the company that just interviewed them and I go, wow, they haven't made a decision yet, but they're leaning towards you. But right now it's only at about 85%. They seem to, you're in the top two, but they haven't really decided yet. Have you ever encountered that, or do you always go, "Oh no, I can always tell if the outcome of that"?
No, no, exactly what you're saying. Many times it'll be in the undecided state. Now, one approach I might take if I'm feeling that is I'll then direct myself to a point further in the future. I'll say, okay, I'm going to hone in on 6 months from now, and what does that look like? And that sometimes it may still be blank, or sometimes I may see them where it's like, okay, you're working in this office and it looks like this building, and they say, yeah, that's the same building that, I interviewed in, but I might see them, somewhere else. So sometimes a psychic can direct their attention to a different point in time, and then they'll get the information, but sometimes it still is completely blank. And that's actually a technique I learned from remote viewing, since you could take a timeline and you could look. Let's say there's an event that's happened. You can look a minute before the event, 10 minutes before, 2 days before, and you could do the same thing with the future. So you might not get so much information like 2 days in the future, but you might get 10 minutes in the future. So, but you're not going to, the information isn't always just going to flow. You sometimes really have to direct yourself. And that's why I'm so pro techniques and approaches, because a lot of psychics don't realize that, they'll get impressions, they'll get information, but they don't know that if they just fine-tune how they guide themselves and what they say, like, I'm going to focus on this period of time, or I'm going to focus. In remote viewing, you can move yourself around a location. So wherever you end up, maybe the flow of information is stopped, but now you can direct yourself to the ground. What's at ground level? Okay, I get a little bit of information, but the flow is stopped. Now I'm going to go up 500 feet and look down and get a bird's eye perspective. Now I'm going to move to the right and touch whatever I noticed and hug it and interact with it and talk to it. And now a new stream of information is going to flow out that wasn't there before.
Right. So you have control over this. It's not just, well, I have to just wait and see what comes to me. Deborah, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back. Everyone stay with us. These are quick commercial breaks, and we have a lot of fascinating information to talk about psychic abilities and if you are able to do it and where we're going with the consciousness. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Pamela Olsie Hour with our special guest today, Debra Lynne Katz. She's written all kinds of fun books. We're talking, like, for example, You Are Psychic, Extraordinary Psychic, and Freeing the Genie Within. So obviously she knows that you've got the ability to do this too. We're having a great conversation about psychic abilities. So Deborah, to pick up where we just left off, so we can see the future. You and I both do this. Do you believe that anyone has the ability to do this?
Well, if we expand it not just to the future, but to, seeing any information, yes, I believe that anybody has the ability to do it. Some people have an easier time. However, those that start off not having a real easy time, finding it more challenging, if they put in the practice, if they study from different teachers who can help them overcome the areas they're having trouble in, and they stick with it, they're going to get their levels up to the people that have an easier time most of the time. Now, are there some people that are just, complete, it comes so naturally, they're complete, stars, they don't have to, I think of them like Olympic athletes. There's Olympic athletes that are going to be able to do certain things better than others. Sure, that can be the case. But what I've found is with the people that I've worked with, even the ones that were really lagging behind, I might have had to have them repeat my class or, do or work really hard to find what worked for them that was different from a lot of other people. But then after a while, they not only improved, but started to exhibit a skill level that even exceeded some of the people that just took off running.
Well, Deborah, explain to people, why do you feel there's a benefit in developing these abilities? Why should people, I mean, you're right, some people are very natural at it, very gifted at it, other people they'd have to work at it, but why would somebody want to develop this? What are the benefits that come with these abilities?
Well, first of all, everyone is using their abilities all the time. So a lot of thoughts that people have, a lot of feelings and emotions, these are coming from sources outside themselves, but they're completely shut off to the idea that this is even possible. They think they're a closed system and not an open one. So and anything that comes to them just has to be a part of their brain or their own their physical system. I can't say that word. So it's important for people to know how they're already being impacted by this exchange of information from each other. Beyond that, why does anyone want to know information? Why does anyone want to know what might happen or understand what's happening? You know, what is your boss doing? What are they thinking? What choices are they going to make? What is that guy thinking who you just went out with? You know, what are his intentions? Where are your car keys? You left your car keys somewhere. Do you need to spend a week searching for them, or can you sit down in meditation and get information that will help you find them immediately? We are people that communicate, and everything we do is directed at retrieving information. Why do people read books? Why do they talk to each other? It's all about learning and information. So if you are cut off from your own abilities, it's like cutting out your eyes and your ears and what's so much available to you. Unfortunately, people do this because they don't understand it. They're afraid. Our churches, our government, so many other people who don't understand this just make fun of it. They laugh at it. But how can you make fun of something that's an integral part of your own being and your own abilities? I don't think I'll ever understand that.
Well, and it does scare some people for a couple reasons, probably. One, they might be afraid they're going to pick up something bad or pick up something they don't want to hear. But also, what about people's fear that they're invading someone else's space? Like, maybe it's not okay for me to see how that guy that I just went out with is feeling. Maybe I shouldn't know that, or I'm invading his space. What do you?
Yeah, you could say maybe you're invading his space, but if he's going out with you because he just wants to get you in bed, you know, or he's telling you something but he's lying to you, does that mean it's more important to respect his privacy than to really know what's happening? And the thing is, different people have different perceptual levels. They have different intellectual levels. And so some people aren't going to be fooled by other people because they're already on top of things, or they have the benefit of knowing people who know those people. So, you know, we play these games like the police are allowed to investigate people, but then the police don't have the tools that they really could make use of unless they're working with a psychic. So I'm not saying to disregard privacy, but I think privacy is really overrated. And I've come to that conclusion because the fact is, whether or not I develop my abilities, many of us will just have a conversation with someone or just think of someone. Let's say I think of you, Pam, and immediately I get a thought of something about you. I wasn't trying to make it happen. It just happened. People already have intuitive senses of other people. So if you're going to go with that, or not you, but you're just speaking for other people. Mm-hmm. If they're going to go with that slippery slope, got to respect everyone's privacy, then we better not think about anyone. We better not look at them, because what if intuitively we pick up something that they didn't want us to know?
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. Matter of fact, I so agree with you. We're all telepathic. I believe we all pick up information about each other anyway, and to ignore it, you're exactly right. We're cutting off a lot of valuable information. And I think what causes a lot of pain and fear and anxiety in people is not knowing. It's like, I don't know if that guy likes me or not. I don't know if I'm going to have love in my life. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to have children. That not knowing causes more pain and anxiety than getting a sense of it.
Yeah, that is such a good point. It creates so much anxiety. And why can't we know these things as much as we can? And then we could make better decisions. I mean, I'm sure you've mentioned relationships a few times because you've probably noticed that probably so many of your clients, that's what they're asking about. And if they could just look at things how they really are, and you know, a lot of times people tell other people lies, and it's not that they're even necessarily trying to lie, but they're, you know, even just to be nice. It's my son is 17, and he's had some girlfriends, and you know, he wasn't telling them the truth, or they weren't telling him the truth. And it's like all this does is get people stuck when they're not honest with each other.
Right, right. So what are some of the ways, because I agree, we've all got it in us. I mean, we get hunches, we get feelings, we think of somebody and the phone rings. So it's already a natural ability. What do you suggest people do? What can they do to bring up to a conscious level versus having these thoughts, these understandings on a subconscious or buried level? What can people do?
Well, the very first thing to do is just open up your mind to the possibility that this is what's happening and that some of your thoughts and your feelings could be coming from other sources. So once you're open to that, then and then setting your intention that you want life to show you the truth of this. If this is true, if there is anything to what we're saying, then ask for life to show evidence of this, and that's going to help a lot. Next, there's very helpful techniques, and while I'm not trying to sell my books, I would say that I wrote my first book, You Are a Psychic, The Art of Clairvoyant Reading and Healing, because so many people asked me the same question, and there was just too much to share about it. So there's a lot of great books out there that weren't even out there 10 years ago. So whether you look at mine or others, there's a lot of ways to learn how to do this. There's a lot of quality instruction. I know, Pam, you have programs. I have programs in remote viewing. There's controlled remote viewing. That's one methodology that came out of the military. There's great teachers, Lori Williams, Lynn Buchanan, Paul Smith, Teresa Finch. They're teaching controlled remote viewing techniques. There's different schools out there that teach clairvoyant techniques in addition to my own. Studying healing. Healing is the other side of clairvoyance and intuitive work. There's so many healing modalities. There's so much out there. All you have to do is Google even the word, and you'll come up with more opportunities for learning and growth than you can imagine these days.
And don't you feel like it's important, for one, people have to be willing to get in touch with it and not be afraid of it? Two, we have to learn how to be still and quiet because our minds just chatter, chatter, chatter. There's no way to pick up stuff when it's that busy in our heads, right?
Yes.
You have to learn how to be quiet. And then also practicing, right? So going to these schools or studying with some of these teachers, yours, the International School of Clairvoyance. I mean, being able to practice with other people really helps.
Yes, definitely, the practice. And I'd say I know there's a lot of people here who have taken classes, and what I find is that there's a lot of perpetual students who go from class to class, but then they don't take the time to practice. And practice is essential. So once you learn something, you really want to get as much practice as you possibly can. And yes, the learning how to focus and still your mind is very, very important. I'm so glad that you brought that up through meditation and other practices like that.
Well, and Debra, is it easy? Let's take a quick commercial break, and then I'm going to come back because I want to talk about some of the other ways we can do this and whether or not it's easy to get your own information, if it's easier to tune into someone else. And we're going to talk about free will, and we're going to find out how this is even possible. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are not necessarily those of AM 1290 or the Santa Barbara News Press. The program's validity is for you to decide.
Welcome back to the show. This is Pam Osley with our special guest today, Debra Lynne Katz. I'm going to remind you again, the show is rerun again on Sundays at 8 a.m. if you've missed any part of this. And the shows are also archived on auracolors.com, A-U-R-A colors.com. We want you to be able to go back and listen to all of these great guests, really help your lives expand and grow. And what we really want to do is help you get out of fear and become the most amazing, divine, expansive, conscious being that you can become. And that's why we have people like Debra Lynne Katz on the show. So, Debra, we've been having a conversation about psychic abilities and the benefits they are, and how not to be afraid of them, and some of the ways. Maybe Deborah, can you share maybe a tool or an exercise that you maybe do in your class that people can do at home? Especially, what if they're by themselves? What if they don't have people to practice with? Is there anything people can start doing right now?
Yes, absolutely. Well, especially I would say with remote viewing. Like, let's say you just want to be able to get impressions from a page of a book. You could take any book. I like to use children's books like that are have a lot of pictures in them, or have a lot of pages, like textbooks, science books, history books. So you get a book. Before you open it, you decide on a page, write the page on a piece of paper, and then all you have to do is put your hands on your paper, pretend that it's like a hologram of the page in the book, and then just close your eyes and simply wait for impressions about that page to come into your consciousness. And then as soon as you get some impressions, start to sketch them. You don't have to be a good drawer, but just sketch out whatever's coming to you. And you could also write down if any words comes to you. And that could take literally 2 minutes, and then open up the book, look at the page, and then just check off any matches that you had, and then proceed again to another page. I guarantee you, if you do 10 pages, you're going to find at least a couple matching impressions, and that's a great start.
Oh, good. I like that exercise. So let me just get into this quickly. Why is this possible, Debra? I know you guys are doing, let me remind people, you're going to be at the, one of the speakers at the Applied Precognition Project, the conference, June 13th through the 16th in Las Vegas.
Yes,
Excuse me.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I've been to this conference every year since its inception, and the reason I keep coming back, besides for really terrific speakers, is that we actually practice, and it's great for brand new people or experienced people. We do at least 2 sessions where we're describing photos twice a day, every day, and it's really fun. You learn so much and meet so many amazing people.
Great. Now, first of all, people, you can go to appliedprecog.com and find out about that that conference, Applied Precog, Precog. Oh my gosh. See, I'm tuning in now, and it's like I can't think, left brain here. Appliedprecog.com. You can go to Debra Katz's website, Debra, Debra, Katz, KATZ.com. And do you have information about this conference on your site too?
Yes, it's on my site as well.
That might be an easier one for you to spell, everyone. DebraKatz.com. So what are you going to be doing at these? So people are going to be practicing. Oh, the reason I brought that up is there are also people there that are going to be talking about the science behind this, or how this is even possible to do. What's your understanding of why this is possible?
As far as why is it possible, people can have their theories, but can you tell me, how is it possible that we are human beings on this planet, living, breathing, thinking, living these insane lives that we are? No one can. I mean, the best they can come up is with the Big Bang Theory. So we don't know, but that's what I always point to. If someone is like, how is it possible to have information transferred from mind to mind? That's so minuscule compared to how is it possible that we're living and breathing and these incredible beings. That doesn't make any sense either.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and at this conference, everyone, if you want to learn more about that, or you can get my book, Infinite You, I talk about stuff like this too. It is energy. It's waves of information. That's how we hear. That's how we see. That's how we feel. It's all waves of information.
Yeah.
So, it's not that weird, don't you think? Are you seeing a difference in the consciousness of the planet, Deborah? You've been doing this for a lot of years, right?
Yeah, I'm finding at least there seems to be so many more people open to this. At least, I could speak over the last 30 years or so. If you just look at the number of books, I did that once. I counted how many books were available 20 years ago on this subject versus how many are now, and there's hundreds more available. There's so much more people that are coming to these conferences and that are interested in the subject matter, and so many more training opportunities. That being said, has it really infiltrated mass consciousness? I think some concepts have. I would say, like you were talking about energy, that we're energetic beings. I do feel that more people are a lot more aware of empathy, of being able to exchange emotions and feelings. That's definitely something that people have opened up to. I think a lot of psychology programs. I'm actually going to be starting a PhD program in transpersonal psychology in the fall, and there's so many more programs that really honor the spirit and energy. And so, you could look at what's happening in our major educational institutions and see a switch. However, parapsychology is something that still is, it's not easy to find universities that have courses in it. You can't get an actual PhD in parapsychology, and parapsychology would encompass the study of anything from mediumship, clairvoyance, telepathy. There's so much going on in that field, but there's still a pretty small amount of people that are really involved in that research. The research is sound. It's in depth, and there's a lot of it, but that really hasn't infiltrated mainstream education, and it's unfortunate. And I have to say that some of this has to do, I believe, with religious groups that now, on the one hand, I have so much respect for so many different religious institutions because they're doing the same thing as far as connecting with a higher source. When you pray to God, what are you doing? You're connecting with the strongest power out there. You're healing yourself by bringing in that energy, bringing in that power. And when you communicate with deities like God or Jesus, you're using your telepathy to communicate with other spirits. It's just these institutions have it in a very narrow context of what they say is okay. So you can only communicate with who they sanction. You can't, in the Catholic religion, you're not even, if your mother dies and comes to you to speak to you, you're not even supposed to speak with your mother. And what if your mother has a message that's going to save your life? Or on the other side, she's desperately trying to get this message to you and bring you comfort. But certain religions say, no, you're supposed to stay away from that. You can only talk to who we say you can talk to. So what I think that this has had an impact, just like religious groups have an impact on our political system in a very large way. It's true with this as well. And my hope is that, people like yourself and anyone that are educators in the field of psychic work, development, healing, that we can find a way. I think we need to start having dialogues with pastors and priests and religious leaders to say, hey, you guys need to get on the ball of what this is really about. We want the best for everybody, and the same that you do, and we reject any darkness that is out there. Any evilness. There is evil and there is dark, but if we can see it, then we can avoid it or we can heal it. If we have to just pretend none of this is real so that we don't even get a glimpse of the forces that are hurting people, and the darker forces oftentimes work through alcohol and drugs and violence. So we know the evil is out there, but when we can see it, we can help people separate from that. If we go along with the religious groups saying, don't even be aware of anything going on around you, then we have so much less to battle the darkness with.
So what do you feel things would change if more and more people opened up their own intuitive, psychic, clairvoyant, mediumship, if more people develop these abilities, how do you see the world changing, Deborah? I see what you believe is holding it back, and people fear it's lack of understanding, lack of awareness, lack of knowledge of what it really is. What do you see things? How do you see it improving if people develop this? The whole world, not just people's individual lives.
Well, that's a very interesting question, and one has to ask now. I think that everyone needs to get in touch with their own hearts and what really matters for them, and stop listening to what's being told on the outside. But I think if everyone just suddenly woke up to, let's say they all became extremely intuitive, waking up to what was really going on around them, I think we would go through a period. In fact, I think in some ways that's kind of happening. And, when you wake up to what's going on around you, because you're more perceptive, sometimes what you're waking up to is not very pleasant. And I'm not talking about, evil spirits. I'm talking about the people we live with, our leaders, our educators, our politicians. We wake up and see the truth of how we've been oppressed and our freedom has been oppressed. And I think this is partially what's happened, or maybe largely happening in these other countries where the Arab Spring, it's about, how realizing, wait a second, we don't need to take how we've been treated here. And that came out of a waking up. In the same way, in America, I'd say we woke up around the time of our financial crisis about 8 years or so ago. It was waking up, realizing that we couldn't just trust our banks and our financial institutions and other institutions, and we thought that we were safe, and we found that we weren't. A lot of people were really suckered in to a lot of negative things by careless people. So when that happens, there's going to be pandemonium. There could be wars. There could be violence. So I'm not saying it will be pretty at all. It might look horrendous for a while if everybody just woke up. But the thing is, you were asking before about what if we could see people's secrets. Well, I think the same is really the other side of the same coin, is that there's going to be a lot of chaos as we wake up, but then we're going to have to be more honest. If every person knew that everyone else could see the truth, then all those people that are lying or committing fraud or just self-interested, they would either have to change or they would be eliminated from society. They'd be thrown in jail. The rest of society wouldn't put up with it.
Agreed.
And eventually, over a century or two, you'd have a lot more honest people.
Right. And then we wouldn't have a reason to hide who we really are. We can be authentic. We develop more compassion. And, we're going to, and the last thing of how it could change. Look at people are afraid. I don't want someone to know what I'm doing and what I'm thinking, and yet they post everything on social media. They tweet everything,
Oh my gosh,
Facebook everything, post everything. It's like, I don't think we're that afraid of our privacy being invaded anymore. Deborah, we're going to take our last quick commercial break, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more. Everyone, stay with us. It's a quick break. Welcome back to the Pamela Osler Hour. We are having fun today, having a fantastic conversation with Debra Lynne Katz, who has written You Are Psychic. They're going to be at the Consciousness is Fundamental Precognition Wealth Wisdom Conference in Las Vegas, June 13th through the 16th. You can go to appliedprecog.com for more information. You can also go to Debra Katz's website, Debra, Debra, Katz, KATZ.com, and learn about that conference. I think it's important information. And, seriously, Debra, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm a lot happier, calmer, more trusting and everything with these, and more compassion with these abilities developed, because when people go, oh my gosh, who's going to get in for president and what's going to happen to the economy? I go, you know what? I know who I am. I trust inside. I know everything's fine. So I'm not really worried about it. So I'm not as jostled around by outside circumstances. which leads to another question for you. How does free will play into this? If you can see the future, and let's say you're working with a client and you can see they're headed for a divorce, do you believe they have free will? Do you show them ways they can change that? Or is it pretty much like, no, sorry, it's what we see, you're doomed?
Yeah, absolutely. Free will seems to be a very large part of it. And, a lot of times it really, again, it doesn't seem, most things don't seem so set. Now, what might be set, like let's say somebody wants to know, is their husband going to change? Well, we can look at that, and you've probably noticed that sometimes you get a sense like, yeah, this person looks like over time they will change. Other times it just seems like, no, they're not. So that's where the free will comes in, that, okay, you may not get him to change, but you have a choice. Do you want to stay with this person as they are? And we could intuitively look and see how can you cope with these behaviors so that you can stay together if that's what you're really wanting. Or, your choice is, well, he's going to stay the same, and so do you want to, put up with it or not?
And do you find deep inside, Deborah, most people, when you give them a reading about the future, most people, for things like that, they sense it deep inside. They sense it's like, yeah, I know my husband's not going to change. I can tell, but I'm hanging in there. Maybe he will. Maybe he will. And what you're hearing is their soul saying, not really. So, and doesn't this help with when people are afraid of seeing the future, they're afraid of developing psychic abilities and being able to see their own future. Don't you find that it's more empowering that they can go, oh, I do see this coming. Now what can I do to change that? Right?
Yeah, certain things, and maybe it's not changing it, but it's coping with it. I feel like for myself and it's not like we develop our abilities and just suddenly like we know everything about our future. I think most of the time we really need to still tune in and say, okay, I want to get information. So it still is a choice. It's not like you're just constantly flooded with all this information. And for those people that are, there's ways to turn that down so you can pick and choose what you're tuning into. But I've found at times knowing what's going to happen can prepare me. For example, I just went through a tax audit with the IRS, which was rather unpleasant, but I looked at it, and a couple other readers gave me some input, and they said, things are going to look okay overall, but it looks like you're going to have to do a lot to prepare, and it's not going to be over as soon as you want it to be over. Now, one of them was like, oh, I'm sorry, that's bad news. You're still going to have to go through things a little bit. Well, that's exactly what happened. It took maybe 4 more weeks to wrap things up, where I wanted it to be over as soon as the appointment was. But knowing that prepared me, and so I wasn't disappointed. I was mentally prepared. Just one other example, though, of when I wished I didn't know the information. My son's been an actor since he was 5, and we would have to drive 2 hours back and forth to Los Angeles for an audition that usually lasts about 2 minutes. And so a couple times I tuned in to see, is he going to get the part? Is it worth going? And I got, no, he's not going to get the part. But I still felt like I had to go for a couple of reasons. One is his agent wasn't going to accept my intuitive information. 2, every time, even though he wasn't going to get the part, he was going to still develop by getting that practice, by being able to stand up in front of people and meet with people and get that experience. And then 3, what if I was wrong? I didn't want to risk being wrong. But the downside of it was that we went all that way, and it just kind of put a damper on, the excitement. Is he going to get it? What's going to happen? Because a part of me knew he wasn't. So in some respects like that, I don't want to know. But overall, I've been really, the other thing about it, again, not so much about the future, but I've had a couple times in my life where I was really stuck on a relationship, like I didn't want to let it go. And I tuned in, and in this one particular time, I was having a real hard time with this one guy, and I looked at it, and I had this image of, those little Andes mints? They're really small. Well, I had this image where he was cutting it into thirds, and it was already small, and then he cut a little piece, and he handed it to me, and he said, this is how much I have to give to you and I'm willing to give to you. And he handed it to me. And when I saw that image, I was like, oh, my God, I need more than this from a relationship. I can't handle this. And seeing that helped me make the shift and let go of something that wasn't even mine to keep. So it's been, and from that example, that was not a long reading. You know, I didn't sit there, because you probably found this yourself. Like, are you able to really sit there and read yourself for like an hour like you can other people? I find I only get quick flashes with myself, but they're rich flashes.
Right. No, yeah, I agree with you, Deborah. It seems to be easier to read other people because I'm not emotionally attached to their outcome the way I am my own, or my own self-doubt can get in the way. So Deborah, yeah, I just want to encourage people. I love that you're doing this. I want to encourage people to trust their own intuition, to really learn how to expand and not be afraid to be more empowered and more intuitive. And in the 30 seconds we have left here, what would you like to say to people? Literally 30 seconds.
Well, like you mentioned before, meditation is so important, and there's different forms of meditation. Some are very active and exciting and not just focusing on a single thing, but meditations that involve running energy, bringing in light, releasing emotions and energies that are not helpful. This is so important. So this will help you develop your abilities, but even if you don't have that strong of an interest, there's ways so that you can transform your space, your emotional space, and yourself so that you can always feel better. And if nothing else,
thank you.
That's the most important thing.
Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for everyone for listening. We'll join you next week. Bye-bye.
AM 1290's quantum psychic Pam Olsie, thank you for your time and open mind in furthering the discussion of bringing the unknown to light in our daily lives, where spirit and science evolve and revolve around each other. The viewpoints expressed in this program are not necessarily those of AM 1290 or the Santa Barbara News Press. The program's validity is for you to decide. Yet, a leap forward in mankind's expanding consciousness requires a look within. Thanks for making the leap.